A haunting sunset confession turns a film set into a maze of secrets, where love, fear, and hidden truths blur reality and illusion. "Don't move," Jungkook whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. "This is the scene I've been waiting for, and it's not the sun." The camera was still rolling. Jimin froze, not because the director had called for silence, but because something in Jungkook's tone didn't belong to the script. The golden light of the setting sun stretched long shadows across the open field, wrapping everything in a surreal glow that felt too perfect, too staged, even for a film set. "Cut," the director shouted from behind the monitors. No one moved. Jungkook didn't step back. His hand hovered just inches from Jimin's wrist, trembling slightly, as if touching him would shatter something fragile between them. Jimin forced a smile, the kind he had practiced for years, polished, effortless, hiding every crack beneath. "You're improvising again," he said softly, though his chest tightened with something dangerously close to anticipation. "I'm not," Jungkook replied. The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of grass and distant rain. Crew members shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. The script supervisor flipped through her pages, confused. This scene, this exact moment, was not written. Jimin's heart began to race. He had spent his entire life controlling moments like this, controlling perception, emotion, narrative, but Jungkook had always been unpredictable. That was what made him brilliant and terrifying. "Then what are you doing?" Jimin asked, his voice dropping, losing its performative edge. Jungkook finally looked directly into his eyes, not as a co-actor, not as a friend, but as someone standing on the edge of a truth he could no longer contain. "I'm waiting," he said. "For what?" "For you to stop pretending this is just a scene." The silence that followed was heavier than any line of dialogue. Jimin felt it then, that familiar fracture inside him, the one he had buried beneath years of discipline and perfection. His mind screamed to laugh it off, to turn it into a joke, to protect the illusion they had built together. But his body refused. Because Jungkook wasn't wrong. The director hesitated, unsure whether to interrupt. The moment felt too real to cut. "Jungkook," Jimin started, but the name caught in his throat. Memories flashed, late-night rehearsals, shared glances that lingered too long, arguments that felt less like disagreements and more like confessions in disguise. Jimin had always dismissed them, filing them away under method acting, under professional intensity. But standing there now, with the sun sinking behind him and Jungkook's gaze unraveling every defense he had, he realized something terrifying. He had never been acting. "You're crossing a line," Jimin said finally, though his voice lacked conviction. Jungkook let out a quiet, almost bitter laugh. "There was never a line, Jimin. You just drew one so you wouldn't have to choose." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Jimin turned away, breaking eye contact, staring at the horizon where the sun was slipping beneath the earth. The light burned orange and red, like something ending or something beginning. "I chose this," Jimin said, gesturing vaguely around them, the cameras, the crew, the carefully constructed reality of their world. "This is what we're here for." "No," Jungkook replied, "this is what you hide behind." A gust of wind rattled the equipment. Someone muttered nervously. The tension was no longer cinematic, it was real, raw, unpredictable. Jimin clenched his fists. "You don't get to decide that for me." "And you don't get to pretend you don't feel it," Jungkook shot back, his voice rising for the first time. "I've watched you, every take, every pause. You think no one notices, but I do." Jimin's breath caught. Because Jungkook was right again. He had noticed too, how his pulse changed when Jungkook was close, how certain lines felt less like fiction and more like confessions he was too afraid to make in real life. But acknowledging it would mean dismantling everything he had built, his control, his image, his carefully curated identity. "I don't know what you think you see," Jimin said, forcing his voice steady, "but you're wrong." Jungkook stepped closer. "Then look at me and say that again." Jimin hesitated. "Just for a second." But it was enough. Jungkook saw it, the flicker of doubt, the crack in the armor, and something in his expression softened though the intensity remained. "You're scared," he said quietly. Jimin's jaw tightened. "I'm not." "You are," Jungkook insisted, "not of me, of what this means." The truth of it settled between them like a weight neither could ignore. Jimin closed his eyes briefly, gathering himself. When he opened them again, the vulnerability was gone, replaced by something colder, more controlled. "This isn't real," he said. "It's just a moment." Jungkook shook his head slowly. "That's where you're wrong. This," he gestured between them, "this is the only real thing in this entire set." The director finally stepped forward. "All right, that's enough, let's reset." "No," Jungkook interrupted, not taking his eyes off Jimin. "Don't cut." The crew froze. Jimin felt the world narrowing, shrinking until it was just the two of them and the fading light. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper now. Jungkook exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. "Because I'm tired of waiting," he said. "Every day, every scene, I keep thinking you'll finally stop hiding, that you'll look at me and just be honest." Jimin swallowed hard. Honesty. It sounded simple, but for him it felt like stepping off a cliff. "I don't know how," he admitted, the words slipping out before he could stop them. For the first time, Jungkook's expression softened completely. "You don't have to know," he said gently, "you just have to try." The sun dipped lower, the light dimming, casting them in a softer, more uncertain glow. Jimin looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just the co-actor, not just the friend, but someone who had been standing beside him all along, waiting patiently for him to catch up. His chest tightened. "I can't promise anything," Jimin said. "I'm not asking for promises," Jungkook replied, "just truth." The wind stilled. For a moment everything felt suspended, time, sound, even breath. Jimin took a step forward. Not for the scene. Not for the camera. But for himself. He started, his voice trembling, unfamiliar in its rawness. "I don't know what this is, or what it means." Jungkook didn't interrupt. "But I know it's not nothing," Jimin continued, "and that scares me." A faint smile touched Jungkook's lips, soft, relieved but not triumphant. "That's enough," he said. The sun finally slipped below the horizon, leaving behind a quiet, lingering darkness. For the first time, Jimin didn't feel the need to fill it with performance. And somewhere in that silence something shifted, not resolved, not defined, but undeniably real. The silence didn't last. "Everyone out," the director finally snapped, his voice sharp with unease rather than authority. "We're done for today." No one argued. Equipment was shut down too quickly, cables yanked with nervous hands, footsteps scattering across the field like something had gone wrong that no one dared to name. Within minutes, the open set that had been alive with noise and movement became eerily empty, leaving only the fading warmth of the ground and the echo of what had just happened. Jimin didn't move. Neither did Jungkook. The distance between them now felt heavier than before, as if the absence of the crew had stripped away the last layer of protection. There was no script to hide behind anymore, no audience, just truth, raw and unfiltered. "You shouldn't have done that," Jimin said at last, his voice low but steady. Jungkook let out a quiet breath, running a hand through his hair. "And you shouldn't have pretended for this long." Jimin's eyes flashed. "You think this is that simple?" "I think you make it complicated on purpose." A bitter laugh escaped Jimin before he could stop it. "You don't know anything about what I've had to hold together." "Then tell me," Jungkook shot back instantly. "For once, stop giving me half answers and tell me what's really going on in your head." Jimin turned away sharply, packing a few steps before stopping, his hands clenched at his sides. The air had cooled, but his skin felt like it was burning. "You want honesty," he said, his voice tightening. "Fine, here's honesty. I don't get to fall apart. I don't get to figure things out like you do. Everything I do, everything is watched, judged, dissected. One wrong move and it's not just me who pays for it." Jungkook stepped closer, his expression hardening. "So that's your excuse, you're scared of what people will think." "It's not that simple," Jimin snapped, turning back to face him. "You think this industry forgives mistakes, you think people will just accept it." "Accept what?" Jungkook pressed. The question hung in the air, dangerous and loaded. Jimin hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. Jungkook's jaw tightened. "Say it." Jimin shook his head, backing away slightly. "Don't push me." "I'm not pushing you," Jungkook said, his voice dropping, more intense now. "I'm asking you to stop running." I'm not running. You are, Jungkook insisted. You've been running from me for months. Jimin's chest rose and fell unevenly, because I know how this ends. And how is that? Jungkook challenged. Jimin laughed again, but there was no humor in it this time. Badly. The word landed like a verdict. Jungkook stared at him, something flickering in his eyes, hurt, frustration, maybe even anger. You don't get to decide that before we even try. We're not trying anything, Jimin said quickly, almost defensively. This, whatever you think this is, it's just confusion. It'll pass. Jungkook went still. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Confusion, he repeated slowly. Jimin swallowed but forced himself to hold his ground. Yes. Jungkook let out a quiet, disbelieving laugh, shaking his head. You really think you can just label it like that and it disappears? It's the truth, Jimin insisted, though his voice wavered. No, Jungkook said firmly. It's what you tell yourself so you don't have to face the actual truth. And what is that? Jimin demanded. That you feel it too. The words cut deeper than anything else. Jimin's composure cracked, just for a second, but Jungkook saw it, he always did. That doesn't mean anything, Jimin said, quieter now, his voice losing its sharp edge. It means everything, Jungkook replied. They stood there, staring at each other, the tension between them thick and suffocating. Why are you doing this to me? Jimin asked suddenly, the question slipping out before he could stop it. There was something raw in it now, something closer to pleading than anger. Jungkook's expression softened, but only slightly. I'm not doing anything to you, I'm trying to reach you. By cornering me, Jimin shot back. By being honest, Jungkook corrected. Jimin shook his head, stepping back again as if the space might help him breathe. You don't get it, if anyone even suspects. Then what? Jungkook interrupted. What happens, Jimin, say it. Jimin's silence stretched too long. Jungkook's voice dropped, quieter but more dangerous. You lose your image, your control, or is it something else? Jimin looked away. That was answer enough. Jungkook exhaled slowly, the fight draining out of his posture, replaced by something heavier. I'm not asking you to announce anything to the world. I'm not asking you to destroy your career. He paused, his voice tightening slightly. I'm just asking you to stop lying to me. Jimin's throat tightened. I'm not lying, he whispered. Jungkook stepped closer again, close enough now that Jimin could feel the warmth of his presence, could hear the subtle hitch in his breathing. Then look at me, Jungkook said softly, and tell me you don't feel anything. Jimin tried. He really did. But the words wouldn't come. Because standing this close, with everything stripped away, he couldn't deny it anymore, not to Jungkook and not to himself. His silence stretched, fragile and exposed. Jungkook's gaze searched his face, reading every unspoken thought, every hidden fear. That's what I thought, Jungkook murmured. Jimin closed his eyes, a wave of frustration crashing over him. You're making this impossible. No, Jungkook said gently, I'm making it real. Jimin let out a shaky breath, his defenses crumbling in ways he couldn't control. I don't know how to do this. You don't have to know, Jungkook replied, echoing his earlier words. You just have to stop pretending you don't want to. Jimin opened his eyes slowly. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, almost without thinking, Jimin reached out, his hand brushing against Jungkook. The contact was brief, accidental. But it sent a shock through both of them. Jimin pulled back immediately, his breath catching. Jungkook didn't. See, Jungkook said quietly, that's not confusion. Jimin's heart pounded so loudly he was sure Jungkook could hear it. This is a mistake, he said, though the words felt weaker now. Then why does it feel like the only thing that is? Jungkook asked. Jimin had no answer. The night settled around them, the last traces of sunlight gone, leaving only shadows and the quiet hum of the world continuing on without them. And for the first time, Jimin realized that no matter how hard he tried to control it, this wasn't something he could walk away from. The car door slammed harder than Jimin intended, the sound echoing sharply through the quiet parking lot as night fully swallowed the last trace of sunset. Get in. Jungkook didn't move at first. He stood a few steps away, hands tucked into his jacket pockets, watching Jimin with an unreadable expression. "You're running again," he said. Jimin exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair. "I'm trying to get out of here before someone starts asking questions. Or before you have to answer any." Jimin shot him a look. "Are you coming or not?" A beat passed, then Jungkook opened the passenger door and slid in, closing it more quietly than Jimin had. The contrast didn't go unnoticed. The engine started, low and steady, but the silence inside the car was anything but calm. It pulsed, heavy and suffocating, filled with everything they hadn't said, and everything they had. Jimin pulled out of the lot too fast. "You're going to get us into an accident," Jungkook muttered. "Maybe that would simplify things," Jimin replied, eyes fixed on the road. "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." That made Jungkook turn to him fully. "You don't mean that." Jimin didn't respond. Streetlights passed in rhythmic flashes across his face, illuminating the tension in his jaw, the exhaustion in his eyes. "Pull over," Jungkook said suddenly. "No, Jimin." "I said no." Jungkook's patience snapped. "You don't get to shut me out like this after everything you just said." "I didn't say anything," Jimin shot back. "Exactly," Jungkook yelled, "that's the problem." The car swerved slightly before Jimin corrected it, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. "Stop yelling," he said through clenched teeth. "Then stop pretending like this doesn't matter." "It does," Jimin snapped, the words coming out too quickly, too forcefully. "It was just a moment." "Don't," Jungkook cut in sharply, his voice suddenly cold. "Don't reduce it to that." Jimin's chest rose and fell rapidly. "Then what do you want me to call it, Jungkook? A crisis? A mistake?" "Don't call it a mistake," Jungkook said, quieter now, but the hurt in his voice cut deeper than the shouting. Jimin faltered. The car slowed, though he didn't realize it at first. "Because if it's a mistake to you," Jungkook continued, staring straight ahead now, "then what does that make me?" The question hit harder than anything else. Jimin's breath caught, guilt twisting sharply in his chest. "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Jungkook asked, turning back to him. "Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're trying to erase this before it even has a chance to exist." "I'm trying to protect us," Jimin said, his voice cracking slightly. "By denying it," Jungkook challenged. "That's not protection, that's fear." Jimin slammed the brakes. The car jerked to a stop on the side of the empty road, tires crunching against gravel. The sudden silence that followed was deafening. "Fine," Jimin said, turning to him, his eyes burning with something raw and unfiltered. "You want the truth, here it is." Jungkook held his gaze, unflinching. "I'm terrified," Jimin admitted. "Not just of what people will say or what this could cost me, but of what happens if I let myself feel this and it all falls apart anyway." Jungkook's expression shifted, the anger softening into something more complicated. "You think I'm not scared," he said quietly. Jimin hesitated. "Every day," Jungkook continued, "I wake up knowing that what I feel for you could ruin everything. My career, your career, the way people see us, everything, but I still choose it." Jimin's throat tightened. "Why?" Jungkook let out a small, incredulous laugh. "You really have to ask." "Yes," Jimin insisted, almost desperately, "because I don't understand how you can be so sure." Jungkook leaned back in his seat, running a hand over his face. "I'm not sure about anything else, not the future, not how this ends, but I'm sure about how I feel when I'm with you." Jimin's heart pounded. "And that's enough for you?" he asked. "It has to be," Jungkook replied. "Because if I keep waiting for certainty, I'll lose you before I even get the chance to try." The words settled heavily between them. Jimin looked down at his hands, still gripping the steering wheel, knuckles pale. For years, he had built his life on certainty, on control, on predictability. It had kept him safe. But it had also kept him alone. "You don't know what you're asking me to risk," he said quietly. Jungkook leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. "Then tell me." Jimin shook his head. "It's not just about me." "Then who is it about?" Jimin hesitated. "Too long." Jungkook's eyes narrowed slightly. "There's something you're not telling me." Jimin's silence confirmed it. What is it? Jungkook pressed. It's nothing. Don't lie to me. I'm not. Jimin. The way Jungkook said his name, firm, unwavering, made something inside Jimin crack. He exhaled slowly, his shoulders dropping as if the weight of it all had finally become too much to carry alone. There are contracts, he said at last. Jungkook frowned. Contracts. Jimin nodded, his gaze fixed somewhere distant. Clauses, image agreements, things that control how we're seen, what we can and can't do. Jungkook's expression darkened. You're saying you're not allowed to. I'm saying it's complicated, Jimin interrupted quickly. No, Jungkook said, his voice sharpening again. It's not complicated, it's control. It's reality, Jimin corrected. Jungkook shook his head, frustration building again. So what, you're just going to let them decide your entire life? It's not that simple. Then explain it to me. Jimin's voice rose. I can't. The word echoed in the confined space of the car, raw and final. Jungkook stared at him, something shifting in his expression, something deeper than anger now. Or you won't, he said. Jimin flinched. That's not fair, he whispered. Neither is this, Jungkook replied. Silence fell again, heavier than before. Jimin felt trapped, not by Jungkook, not even by the situation, but by himself. By the walls he had built so carefully that now he didn't know how to tear them down. I don't want to lose you, he said finally, the admission quiet but heavy with truth. Jungkook's expression softened immediately. Then don't. It's not that easy. Why not? Because I don't know how to have both, Jimin said, his voice trembling. This and everything else. Jungkook leaned closer, his gaze intense but not harsh this time. Then maybe it's time you decide what everything else is really worth. The words lingered, pressing against all the fears Jimin had tried so hard to ignore. For the first time he didn't have an answer. And that scared him more than anything. Jimin didn't start the car again. The engine idled for a moment, then he turned it off completely, plunging them into a silence so complete it almost rang in their ears. The faint ticking of the cooling engine filled the space between them, sharp and relentless, like a countdown neither of them understood yet. Say something, Jungkook murmured, his voice quieter now but no less intense. Jimin let out a slow breath, leaning back against his seat, staring up through the windshield at the empty stretch of sky. If I say the wrong thing, there's no going back. Jungkook's jaw tightened. You keep acting like there's some safe version of this conversation. There is. Jimin closed his eyes. There used to be. When? Jungkook challenged. Before you decided to say all of this out loud, Jimin replied, turning his head slightly. Before it became real. Jungkook let out a short, disbelieving laugh. It was always real, you just finally heard it. Jimin sat up again, running both hands over his face, frustration seeping through every movement. You don't understand what you've done. Then explain it to me instead of hiding behind that line, Jungkook shot back. Because from where I'm sitting, all I did was stop lying. Jimin's eyes snapped toward him. You exposed it. And you took away my choice, Jimin said, his voice sharp, almost accusing. I had control before this. No, Jungkook said immediately, you had denial. The word cut deep. Jimin leaned forward, his elbows resting on the steering wheel, his head dropping for a moment before he spoke again. Do you think I haven't felt this? He asked, his voice low, strained. Do you think I'm that oblivious? Jungkook went still. Then why, he started, but Jimin cut him off. Because I knew better, Jimin snapped, turning to him, his eyes blazing now. Because I knew what it could turn into, I knew how messy it would get, I knew it wouldn't just stay between us. Jungkook's expression hardened. So your solution was to pretend it didn't exist. My solution was to keep things from breaking, Jimin shot back. And how's that working for you now? Jungkook asked, his voice cutting but not loud. Jimin opened his mouth, then stopped. Because he didn't have an answer. The silence stretched again, but this time it felt different, less like avoidance, more like something unraveling. Jungkook shifted slightly, his voice lowering. You said there are contracts, clauses, control. He paused, watching Jimin carefully. How far does it go? Jimin hesitated. Jimin. It's not just about public image, Jimin said finally, his voice tight. There are expectations, relationships they want us to maintain, narratives they build. Jungkook frowned. What kind of narratives? Jimin didn't answer right away. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. What aren't you telling me? Jimin looked away, his throat tightening. There are arrangements. The word hung heavy. Jungkook's expression shifted, confusion flickering into something darker. What kind of arrangements? Jimin's silence said too much. Realization hit slowly, then all at once. No, Jungkook said under his breath, shaking his head slightly. You're not serious. Jimin swallowed hard. You are, Jungkook breathed, sitting back as if the air had been knocked out of him. You're actually serious. It's not what you think, Jimin said quickly. Then what is it? Jungkook demanded, his voice rising again. Because it sounds a lot like you're telling me your life is being managed. Jimin's hands clenched. It's part of the job. No, Jungkook snapped. It's manipulation. It's survival, Jimin shot back. At what cost? Jungkook challenged. Jimin's voice cracked slightly. At the cost of everything falling apart if I don't follow it. Jungkook stared at him, something raw and wounded in his eyes now. So where does that leave me? Jimin flinched. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Jungkook continued, quieter now but far more dangerous. You're not just scared of what people will think, you're already tied to something else. It's not like that, Jimin insisted, though his voice lacked strength. Then tell me how it is, Jungkook pressed. Because right now it feels like I'm the only one risking anything here. That's not true. Then prove it. The words hit like a challenge, echoing in the confined space. Jimin's breathing grew uneven. You want proof, he said, his voice trembling with something between anger and desperation. Fine, here's proof. I've spent years building something that can disappear overnight if I make one wrong move. Years of control, discipline, sacrifice, and you're asking me to throw that away for something I don't even fully understand yet. Jungkook didn't back down, and what if it's worth it? Jimin laughed bitterly. That's a gamble I can't afford. Jungkook leaned forward, his gaze locking onto Jimin's. Then what am I to you? Just another risk you're calculating. The question hit harder than any accusation. Jimin's composure cracked again, his voice dropping. You're not a risk. Then what am I? Jungkook pressed. Jimin hesitated. His mind raced, searching for something safe, something controlled, but nothing fit anymore. He started, then stopped, his voice failing him. Jungkook's expression softened just slightly, but the tension remained. You can't even say it. Jimin looked at him, something raw and unguarded finally surfacing. Because if I say it, it becomes real in a way I can't take back. Jungkook's voice dropped to a near whisper. It's already real. Jimin shook his head, his frustration boiling over again. You don't understand, once it's out there, once it crosses that line, it changes everything. Jungkook's eyes darkened. Maybe everything needs to change. The words landed like a shock. Jimin stared at him, stunned. You really believe that? Yes, Jungkook said without hesitation. Because what we have right now, this hiding, this fear, it's not living. It's just waiting to break. Jimin's chest tightened. And you think I don't know that, he whispered. You think I don't feel like I'm suffocating sometimes. Jungkook's expression shifted, the anger fading into something more complicated again. Then why keep doing it? Jimin's voice dropped, almost inaudible. Because I don't know how to stop. The honesty in it was disarming. For a moment Jungkook didn't respond. He just watched Jimin, really watched him. The cracks, the exhaustion, the fear he tried so hard to hide. Then slowly he reached out. This time Jimin didn't pull away immediately. Jungkook's fingers brushed against his, tentative but deliberate. You don't have to figure it out all at once, Jungkook said softly. You just have to stop choosing fear every time. Jimin's breath hitched. I don't know if I can, he admitted. Jungkook tightened his grip slightly, not forceful but enough to ground him. Then let me help you. Jimin looked at their hands, at the simple contact that somehow felt more dangerous than anything they'd said. What if I can't give you what you want? He asked quietly. Jungkook didn't hesitate. I'm not asking for guarantees. But you deserve them. Maybe, Jungkook said, but that's not how this works. Jimin's chest ached. For the first time, the idea of letting go of control didn't just feel terrifying, it felt possible. And that was what scared him most. Jimin pulled his hand away first. Not abruptly, not with panic, but slowly, like someone forcing himself to let go of something he knew he might never get back the same way again. The absence of contact was immediate, sharp. Jungkook noticed. Of course he did. So that's it, Jungkook asked, his voice low, controlled, but there was something underneath it now, something heavier than frustration. You get close, you say all that, and then you just pull away again. Jimin stared straight ahead, his expression hardening again like a shield snapping back into place. I didn't say anything I couldn't take back. Jungkook let out a quiet, disbelieving laugh. That's exactly the problem. Jimin turned the key, the engine roaring back to life as if he needed the noise to drown out the conversation. We should go. No, Jungkook said immediately. Jimin's grip tightened on the steering wheel. I'm not doing this here. Then where? Jungkook pressed. Because you keep saying not here, not now, not like this, but you never say when. Jimin didn't answer. The car stayed parked. Jungkook leaned back, running a hand through his hair, frustration boiling over. You're unbelievable. And you're reckless, Jimin shot back. You think this is just about feelings, but it's not, it's bigger than that. Everything is always bigger with you, Jungkook snapped. Bigger expectations, bigger consequences, bigger excuses. Jimin's eyes flashed. You think I'm making excuses? I think you're hiding behind them. Jimin let out a sharp breath. You have no idea what happens behind the scenes. Then show me, Jungkook challenged again, his voice rising. Stop talking in half-truths and actually show me what you're so afraid of. Jimin turned to him slowly, something shifting in his expression. Not just anger now, but something darker, more conflicted. You really want to know? He asked. Yes. Jimin held his gaze for a long moment, then reached for his phone. Jungkook watched, confused at first, as Jimin unlocked it and scrolled through something quickly, his jaw tightening with every second. Then he turned the screen toward Jungkook. Read it. Jungkook frowned, taking the phone. At first it looked like just another contract, pages of legal language, dense and precise. But as his eyes moved across the screen, his expression changed. Line by line. Clause by clause. His jaw clenched. This is insane, Jungkook muttered. Jimin didn't respond. This isn't just image control, Jungkook continued, scrolling further. This is full restriction. Personal relationships, public behavior, even private interactions. I told you, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook looked up at him, disbelief written all over his face. You signed this. Jimin's silence was answer enough. Why? Jungkook demanded. Jimin let out a hollow laugh, because at the time it didn't feel like a choice. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have, Jimin snapped. Jungkook shook his head, running a hand through his hair again, packing the limited space of the car as much as he could. So what? You're just going to let a piece of paper dictate your entire life? It's not just paper, Jimin said, his voice tightening. It's consequences, lawsuits, penalties that could destroy everything, not just for me. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. So you're protecting them? I'm protecting everyone, Jimin corrected. At the cost of yourself. Jimin didn't answer. That silence was louder than anything else. Jungkook stared at him, something shifting again, less anger now, more something raw, almost desperate. And where do I fit into that? Jimin's chest tightened. You don't, he said quietly. The words landed like a blow. Jungkook froze. For a moment he didn't react at all. Then he laughed, but it wasn't humor, it was disbelief, sharp and cutting. Wow. Jimin looked away. No, seriously, Jungkook continued, his voice rising again, hurt bleeding through every word. That's it. After everything you just said, after everything you admitted, you're telling me I don't fit anywhere in your life. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Jungkook interrupted, his voice breaking slightly. Because it sounds like you're choosing them. The contracts, the image, the expectations, you're choosing all of that over me. Jimin's eyes snapped back to him. It's not a choice like that. Then explain it in a way that doesn't sound exactly like that, Jungkook shot back. Jimin struggled for words, frustration and guilt tangling together. You think this is easy for me? I don't think you're even trying, Jungkook said. The accusation hit hard. Jimin flinched. That's not fair. What's not fair, Jungkook replied, his voice dropping, more controlled now but no less intense, is that you expect me to just accept being nothing. Something you feel but can't acknowledge, something you hide. Jimin's throat tightened painfully. You're not nothing, he said, his voice quieter now, strained. Then prove it, Jungkook said again. The same challenge. But this time it felt heavier. Jimin looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the hurt he had been trying to ignore, the frustration, the vulnerability. Jungkook rarely showed this openly. It cracked something deeper inside him. I don't know how, Jimin admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook exhaled sharply, shaking his head. That's not enough anymore. Jimin's chest tightened. What does that mean? It means I can't keep doing this, Jungkook said, his voice steadier now, but there was a finality in it that made something in Jimin's stomach drop. I can't keep standing here feeling like this, while you keep one foot out the door. Jimin felt the words like a physical impact. So what are you saying? Jungkook met his gaze directly. I'm saying I need more than this. Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't uncertain. It was heavy, definite. Jimin's mind raced, panic creeping in at the edges. Mori what? Mori honesty, Mori risk, Mori you, Jungkook said. Not the version that's controlled and careful and afraid, the real you. Jimin's hands tightened into fists. And if I can't give you that? Jungkook didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet. Then maybe this isn't something we can keep doing. The words hit harder than anything else that night. Jimin felt his breath catch, his chest tightening painfully. You're giving up. I'm not giving up, Jungkook said, though his voice wasn't as steady as before. I'm asking you to meet me halfway. And if I do, Jimin pressed, his voice cracking slightly despite himself. Jungkook looked at him for a long moment. Then he opened the car door. The cool night air rushed in instantly, sharp and unforgiving. Then I stop waiting, Jungkook said. He stepped out. Jimin's heart slammed against his ribs. Jungkook. But Jungkook didn't turn back immediately. He stood there for a second, his back to the car, shoulders tense, as if he was holding himself together by sheer force. When he finally spoke again, his voice was quieter. I meant what I said earlier, he added. This is the only real thing I've felt in a long time. Jimin's chest ached. And I'm not going to pretend it's nothing just because you're scared of what it might become. Jimin swallowed hard, his vision blurring slightly. Jungkook, wait. Jungkook turned then, just enough for Jimin to see his expression. There was no anger left. Just something deeper. If you want this, Jungkook said softly, then choose it, not halfway, not secretly, actually choose it. The words settled into Jimin like a weight he couldn't ignore. Then Jungkook stepped back, closing the car door. And this time... He walked away. Jimin didn't move for a long time. The car felt too small, too quiet, like the air itself had thickened around him. His hands were still on the steering wheel, but he wasn't driving. His mind replayed everything, every word, every pause, every look Jungkook had given him before walking away. Then I stop waiting. The sentence echoed, louder each time. Damn it, Jimin muttered under his breath, finally moving. He shoved the car into gear and pulled back onto the road, faster than before, the tires biting against asphalt as if speed alone could outrun the weight pressing down on his chest. But no matter how far he drove, Jungkook's voice stayed with him. And worse, so did the truth. By the time Jimin reached his apartment, his hands were shaking. The building loomed quiet and expensive, polished glass reflecting a version of himself he barely recognized, controlled, composed, untouchable. The version everyone knew. The version Jungkook had just shattered. He stepped inside, the familiar silence of his place greeting him like an old habit. Everything was exactly where it should be. Perfect. Ordered. Empty. Jimin exhaled sharply, tossing his keys onto the table, the sound echoing too loudly in the stillness. Get it together, he murmured to himself. But the words felt hollow. His phone buzzed. He froze. For a split second, hope flickered, irrational, immediate. Jungkook. But when he looked down at the screen, the name was Jungkook. It was his manager. Jimin's stomach tightened. He stared at the phone as it continued to buzz, the vibration crawling under his skin like a warning. Then he answered. Hello. Where are you? The voice on the other end was sharp, controlled, but laced with something unmistakable, tension. At home, Jimin replied, his tone automatically shifting into something more neutral. Why? A pause. You left set early. Jimin's jaw tightened. We wrapped. No, the manager said more firmly now. You walked out. Jimin exhaled slowly. What's your point? My point, the manager continued, is that something happened, and I want to know what it is before it becomes a problem. Jimin's grip on the phone tightened. It's already handled. Is it? The manager pressed. Because I'm getting calls, questions, people notice the tension. Of course they did. Jimin closed his eyes briefly. It was just an intense scene. Don't lie to me, the manager snapped. The sudden shift in tone made Jimin's chest tighten. I'm not. Jimin, the voice cut in, lower now but far more dangerous. You know what's at stake. I need you to be very clear with me right now. Did anything happen that could affect your image? The question hit exactly where it was meant to. Jimin hesitated. And that hesitation was enough. You need to fix this, the manager said immediately, the implication heavy. Whatever it is, you fix it, tonight. Jimin's pulse quickened. There's nothing to fix. Then you won't have a problem making sure that's true, the manager replied coldly. Because if something gets out, if there's even a rumor, you know what happens. Jimin swallowed hard. Yes, he knew. The silence stretched, suffocating. Handle it, the manager repeated before the line went dead. Jimin lowered the phone slowly. For a moment he just stood there, staring at nothing. Then his hand curled into a fist. Fix it, he whispered, the words tasting bitter. His gaze drifted to the window, to the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass. Somewhere out there, Jungkook was walking away from him, maybe already gone in a way that couldn't be undone. And Jimin was being told to erase it. Erase him. The thought made something inside him snap. No, Jimin muttered. But the word felt fragile. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jungkook. Jimin's breath caught. For a second he didn't move. Then he answered. A Jungkook. There was silence on the other end. Then, did they call you? Jimin frowned slightly, caught off guard. What? My manager, Jungkook clarified, his voice tight. Or yours, someone. Jimin's chest tightened again. Yeah. A bitter exhale came through the line. Of course they did. Jimin ran a hand through his hair. What did they say to you? That I need to be careful, Jungkook replied. That I shouldn't let personal distractions interfere with work. Jimin's jaw clenched. They didn't say your name, Jungkook added quietly, but they didn't have to. The silence between them felt different now, not just emotional but pressured, like something external was closing in. They told me to fix it, Jimin admitted. Another pause. And Jungkook asked. Jimin hesitated. That hesitation was dangerous. You're thinking about it, Jungkook said, his voice dropping. Zai. You are, Jungkook cut in sharper now. You're actually considering it. It's not that simple, Jimin said quickly. It is to them, Jungkook replied, and apparently it is to you too. That's not fair, Jimin snapped. What's not fair, Jungkook shot back, is that the second they apply pressure you fold. I'm not folding, Jimin insisted. Then what are you doing? Jungkook demanded, because it sounds a lot like you're about to do exactly what they want. Jimin's chest tightened painfully. You don't understand the kind of pressure. I understand enough, Jungkook interrupted. I just didn't think you'd let it control you like this. The words strung. Jimin's voice dropped, quieter now but heavier. You think I have a choice? Yes, Jungkook said immediately. No, Jimin replied just as firmly, I don't. Everyone has a choice, Jungkook said. Not like this, Jimin argued. Not when the consequences are this big. Jungkook was silent for a moment. Then maybe I was wrong about you. The sentence hit like a blade. Jimin froze. What does that mean? It means, Jungkook said slowly, I thought you were stronger than this. Something inside Jimin cracked. That's not fair, he said again, but this time his voice wasn't defensive, it was hurt. Isn't it? Jungkook replied. You told me you were suffocating, that you didn't know how to stop. I believed you. I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd actually fight for something you care about. Jimin's throat tightened. I do care. Then show it, Jungkook said. The same words. But now they carried more weight than ever. Because right now, Jungkook continued, his voice quieter but sharper, it feels like I'm the only one who's willing to lose something for this. Jimin's chest ached. You think this doesn't cost me anything? I think you're choosing what it costs you, Jungkook replied. Silence fell again. Heavy pressing. I can't lose everything, Jimin said finally, the words almost a confession. Jungkook exhaled slowly. And I can't keep being something you're afraid to have, he said. Jimin closed his eyes. Jungkook. I'm not asking you to decide right this second, Jungkook added, his voice softening just slightly. But I'm asking you to be honest about what you're choosing. Jimin's grip on the phone tightened. Because if you choose them, Jungkook continued, then at least I'll know where I stand. The words lingered. Sharp. Final. Jimin's mind raced, every fear, every consequence crashing into him at once. The contract. The expectations. The image. And Jungkook. Waiting. Or maybe. Not anymore. Jimin started, but his voice failed him. And for the first time in his life. He didn't know what the right answer was. Jimin didn't answer. The silence stretched so long that even the faint static on the line seemed louder than his own breathing. His chest rose and fell unevenly, every second pressing heavier against him like time itself was demanding a decision he wasn't ready to make. Say something, Jungkook murmured, his voice quieter now, but there was an edge to it, something close to breaking. Jimin opened his mouth. Closed it again. Because every word felt like it would cost him something irreversible. I need time, he said finally. The moment the words left his mouth, he knew. Wrong answer. On the other end, Jungkook let out a soft, almost hollow laugh. Of course you do. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, Jungkook cut in, his voice no longer raised but colder now, more distant. You always need time when it comes to this, but somehow time never actually changes anything. Jimin's grip on the phone tightened. That's not true. Then prove it, Jungkook said, the challenge returning, but it sounded different now. Less hopeful, more exhausted. I can't just. Just what? Jungkook pressed. Just choose me. The words hit hard. Jimin flinched even though Jungkook couldn't see him. It's not that simple. It never is with you, Jungkook replied. There it was again. That wall. That distance. Jimin felt panic creeping in, sharp and suffocating. Why are you making this sound like I don't care? Because right now, Jungkook said quietly, it feels like you care more about everything else. That's not fair, Jimin whispered. Then stop proving me right. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy with everything they weren't saying. Jimin paced his apartment, running a hand through his hair, his thoughts spiraling. You're asking me to risk everything overnight. And you're asking me to wait indefinitely, Jungkook replied. Jimin stopped walking. I'm not asking you to wait forever, he said. Jungkook exhaled sharply. You don't have to, you already made me wait long enough. The words landed like a quiet accusation. Jimin's chest tightened. So what, this is it, you're just done. Jungkook didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something fragile. I don't want to be, he said, but I can't keep standing in the same place while you're too afraid to take a single step forward. Jimin swallowed hard. I did take a step, he argued weakly. Tonight I told you the truth. You told me part of it, Jungkook replied, and then you immediately pulled back. Jimin closed his eyes, because it's complicated. No, Jungkook said firmly, it's not, you either choose it or you don't. The simplicity of the statement made it feel even more impossible. You think it's that easy? Jimin asked, his voice rising again. You think I can just wake up tomorrow and ignore everything I've built, everything that could collapse if I make the wrong move? And you think I can just keep pretending this doesn't matter? Jungkook shot back. That I can just go back to acting like we're nothing more than co-stars? Jimin hesitated. Because he couldn't. And neither could Jungkook. That's the problem, Jungkook continued, his voice dropping. There is no going back, Jimin, not after tonight. The truth of that settled deep. Unavoidable. Jimin leaned against the wall, sliding down slightly until he was sitting on the floor, the weight of everything pressing down on him. I hate this, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook's response was softer. Yeah, me too. The shared vulnerability lingered for a moment, fragile but real. Then Jimin spoke again. Tell me something honestly, he said, his voice quiet but steadying slightly. If I choose this, if I choose you, and everything falls apart, what happens then? The question wasn't rhetorical. It was real. Jungkook was silent for a moment. Then we deal with it, he said. Jimin let out a small, humorless laugh. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have, Jungkook replied. Because I don't know what the fallout looks like, I don't know how bad it could get. But I do know that walking away from something real just because it's hard isn't something I can live with. Jimin's chest tightened. And you think I can, he asked. I think you already are, Jungkook said quietly. The words cut deeper than anything else. Jimin looked down at the floor, his reflection faintly visible in the polished surface. A version of himself he barely recognized. Controlled. Safe. Alone. You said earlier that I don't fit anywhere in your life, Jungkook continued, his voice calmer now but heavier. Is that really true? Jimin's throat tightened. No, he admitted. Then where do I fit? Jungkook asked. Jimin hesitated. But this time, he didn't stay silent. You're the part I can't control, he said slowly. The part that doesn't follow the rules I've built everything around. Jungkook didn't interrupt. And that terrifies me, Jimin continued, because it means I can lose everything or I can lose you. A quiet breath came through the line. That's not a fair choice, Jungkook said. I know. Silence fell again. But it felt different this time. Less like avoidance. More like something shifting. Then stop treating it like you only get to save one thing, Jungkook said softly. Jimin frowned slightly. What do you mean? I mean maybe it's not about choosing between your life and me, Jungkook replied. Maybe it's about changing what your life looks like so I can actually be part of it. Jimin let out a shaky breath. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, Jungkook said, it's just necessary. The word lingered. Necessary. Jimin sat there, his mind racing, every instinct telling him to retreat to protect what he had built. But for the first time, another voice pushed back. Quieter, but stronger than before. What if I try, Jimin said slowly, the words unfamiliar but real, and I fail? Jungkook didn't hesitate. Then at least you tried. Jimin closed his eyes, his chest tightening again. And if trying breaks everything, he whispered. Then we figure out what's left, Jungkook said. Jimin exhaled shakily. For so long, his world had been built on certainty. Now, he was standing at the edge of something uncertain. Uncontrolled. Real. Jungkook. Yes. Jimin hesitated. But this time, not out of fear. Out of weight. I don't know if I'm ready, he admitted. Jungkook was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't need you to be ready, he said softly. I just need you to stop pretending you'll never be. Jimin's breath caught. Because that felt closer to the truth than anything else. And for the first time, he didn't deny it, Jimin didn't sleep. The city outside his window faded from restless noise into the hollow quiet of early morning, but inside his apartment, nothing settled. His thoughts kept circling the same point, over and over, like a needle stuck on a record that refused to move forward. I don't need you to be ready. I just need you to stop pretending you'll never be. Jungkook's voice wouldn't leave him. By the time the first pale light broke through the glass, Jimin was still sitting on the floor, his phone lying beside him, untouched since the call ended. He hadn't said goodbye, neither had Jungkook. There hadn't been a clear ending. And somehow, that made everything worse. His phone buzzed again. This time he didn't hesitate to pick it up. A message. Not from Jungkook. From his manager. Meetings 9 a.m, don't be late. Jimin stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. Of course. Reality didn't wait. The conference room felt colder than usual. Or maybe it was just him. Jimin sat across from his manager, posture straight, expression controlled, perfectly composed on the outside. But under the table his fingers pressed into his palm hard enough to leave marks. You look tired, the manager noted, watching him closely. I'm fine. A small, knowing pause. Let's not waste time, the manager said, sliding a tablet across the table. There's been chatter. Jimin didn't touch it. About what? You tell me. The tension in the room sharpened instantly. Jimin met his gaze steady. I wouldn't know. Another pause. Then the manager leaned back slightly, studying him with an intensity that felt less like concern and more like calculation. You've been in this industry long enough to know how quickly things spiral, he said. A look, a moment, a rumor, it doesn't take much. Jimin stayed silent. And last night, the manager continued, was noticeable. Jimin's jaw tightened. It was a scene. It stopped being just a scene, the manager replied. The words hung heavy. Jimin felt it again, that pressure tightening around him from all sides. You need to be careful, the manager added, especially with him. There it was. Not said directly, but clear enough. Jimin's eyes flickered. Jungkook didn't do anything wrong. I didn't say he did, the manager said calmly, but dynamics matter, perception matters more. Jimin let out a slow breath. So what exactly are you asking me to do? The manager leaned forward slightly, folding his hands. Distance. The word landed like a weight. Keep things professional, clean, no unnecessary interactions outside of work. Jimin's chest tightened. That's not going to be a problem, is it? The manager added. Jimin hesitated. And in that hesitation, everything was revealed. The manager's expression shifted just slightly, not surprised, just confirmed. I see, he said quietly. Jimin's pulse quickened. It's not like that. You don't need to explain it, the manager replied, though his tone suggested the opposite. You just need to manage it. Jimin looked away, his control slipping for just a second. And if I do? The room went still. The manager's voice dropped, calm but firm. Then we have a bigger problem. Jimin swallowed hard. You signed those terms for a reason, the manager continued. They protect you, your career, everything you've built. Jimin laughed quietly, bitter. Protect me? Yes. Or control me, Jimin shot back before he could stop himself. A flicker of tension crossed the manager's face. Be careful, he warned. Jimin leaned back slightly, exhaling. I'm just asking. And I'm just answering, the manager said. This isn't about control, it's about maintaining stability. At what cost? Jimin murmured. The manager didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was measured, at the cost of making difficult choices. The words echoed. Jimin felt something inside him twist. Sometimes, the manager added, you have to let go of things that complicate the bigger picture. Jimin's chest tightened again. Things. That's what Jungkook had been reduced to. A complication. Is that what you think this is? Jimin asked quietly. I think it's a risk, the manager replied, and right now you can't afford risks. Jimin's hands clenched under the table. For a moment he said nothing. Then, what if I decide I can? The question slipped out before he could stop it. The manager's eyes sharpened instantly. That wouldn't be wise. Jimin held his gaze. That's not what I asked. A long pause. Then the manager spoke, slower now, more deliberate. If you choose to ignore this advice, you won't just be dealing with public consequences. There are contractual obligations, legal implications. Jimin felt the weight of those words settle deep. And you know how far those can go, the manager added. Yes, he did. The room felt smaller. Tighter. Like it was closing in on him. Jimin looked down at the table, his reflection faintly visible in the polished surface. Controlled. Careful. Predictable. Everything he had always been. Everything Jungkook had challenged. What do you want from me? Jimin asked finally, his voice quieter now. The manager didn't hesitate. Clarity. Jimin looked up. Are you going to handle this, the manager continued, or are we going to have a problem? The question wasn't really a question. It was a line. Jimin felt it. Clear. Sharp. Unavoidable. And for the first time, he didn't immediately step back from it. I need to talk to him, Jimin said. The manager's expression hardened slightly. About what? Jimin held his gaze. About everything. That's not what I asked, the manager replied. Jimin exhaled slowly. I'm not cutting him off without a conversation, he said more firmly now. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Measured. Then the manager nodded once, slow. Fine. But the tone said it wasn't fine. Make it quick, he added, and make it clean. Jimin stood. His heart was pounding again, but not the same way as before. Not just fear. Something else. Something sharper. I'll handle it, he said. But for the first time. He wasn't entirely sure what that meant anymore. When Jimin stepped out of the building, the daylight felt too bright. Too real. His phone felt heavier in his hand as he stared at Jungkook's name on the screen. For a moment he hesitated. Then he pressed call. It rang once. Twice. Then, Jimin. Jungkook's voice was rough, like he hadn't slept either. Jimin's chest tightened instantly. We need to talk, he said. A pause. Then Jungkook let out a quiet breath. Yeah, we do. Jimin swallowed. Meet me, he added. Where? Jimin looked ahead, the city stretching out in front of him, unpredictable and wide open. And for the first time, he didn't choose the safe option. I'll come to you, opened the door before Jimin could knock a second time. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension was immediate, thick, like something fragile stretched too tight between them. Jungkook looked exactly like Jimin expected, tired, eyes shadowed, hair slightly messy like he'd been running his hands through it too many times. But there was something else too. Distance. Not physical. Something colder. You came, Jungkook said, his voice flat, almost unreadable. Jimin swallowed. I said I would. Jungkook stepped aside without another word. Jimin walked in, the door closing behind him with a quiet but final click that echoed through the room. The apartment was dim, curtains half drawn, sunlight struggling to get in. It felt different from Jimin's place. Less controlled. More real. Jimin shifted slightly, taking it in before turning back to Jungkook. We need to talk, he said again, quieter now. Jungkook leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Yeah, you said that. The tone wasn't hostile. But it wasn't warm either. Jimin felt it immediately. A boundary. Something had changed. I just came from a meeting, Jimin started. Jungkook let out a small, humorless laugh. Of course you did. Jimin frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Jungkook said, pushing off the wall slightly, I already know what they told you. Jimin's chest tightened. You don't know. Distance, Jungkook cut in. Keep it clean, keep it professional, don't let it turn into something messy. Jimin went still. Jungkook held his gaze, something sharp flickering in his eyes. Was I close? Jimin didn't answer. He didn't need to. Jungkook nodded slowly like he had expected it. Right. It's not that simple, Jimin said quickly. It never is, Jungkook replied. The same words again. But now they carried exhaustion instead of frustration. Jimin stepped closer. I didn't come here to repeat the same argument. Then why did you come? Jungkook asked. The question hit harder than expected. Jimin hesitated, his mind racing, searching for the right words, the ones that wouldn't break everything further. I came because I don't want to lose this, he said finally. Jungkook's expression didn't change. This, he repeated. Jimin exhaled, us. The word hung in the air, fragile but undeniable. Jungkook looked away for a moment, running a hand over his face. You say that like it means something different now. It does, Jimin insisted. Last night everything we said. Yeah, Jungkook cut in, last night. There was something in the way he said it that made Jimin's chest tighten again. Last night you told me you were scared, Jungkook continued, his voice calm but edged. That you didn't know how to choose, that you didn't want to lose me. Jimin nodded slightly. I meant that. And this morning, Jungkook asked, turning back to him, what did you mean this morning? Jimin frowned. What do you mean? I mean, Jungkook said, stepping closer now, his voice lowering. Did you come here because you want this, or because they told you to handle it? The words landed hard. Jimin's silence lasted just a second too long. Jungkook saw it. Of course he did. A bitter smile tugged at his lips. That's what I thought. That's not, Jimin started, but Jungkook cut him off again. Don't, he said, sharper now, don't twist it, just answer me. Jimin's chest tightened, frustration rising. Why does it have to be one or the other? Because it is, Jungkook said immediately. You don't get to stand in both places anymore. Jimin ran a hand through his hair, packing a step away before turning back. I came here because I needed to see you, because I couldn't just cut you off without talking to you first. Jungkook's eyes narrowed slightly. So this is closure. No, Jimin said quickly, that's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Jungkook demanded. Jimin hesitated. Again. And this time. It hurt more. I'm trying to figure it out, he admitted. Jungkook let out a sharp breath, stepping back. You're still figuring it out. Yes, Jimin snapped, his voice rising. Because it's not something I can decide in 5 minutes. It's been months, Jimin, Jungkook shot back. Don't act like this just started last night. The truth of it hit hard. Jimin's voice faltered, I know. Then what have you been doing all this time? Jungkook pressed, waiting for it to disappear. Jimin didn't answer. Because that had been exactly it. Jungkook laughed again, shaking his head. Unbelievable. I didn't expect it to turn into this, Jimin said quietly. And what is this? Jungkook challenged. Jimin looked at him, his chest tightening again. Something I can't ignore anymore. The words hung between them. For a moment, Jungkook didn't respond. Then his expression shifted, just slightly. Then don't, he said. Jimin exhaled shakily. You make it sound easy. It's not easy, Jungkook said. It's just honest. Jimin stepped closer again, the distance between them shrinking. The tension rising with it, and honesty is supposed to fix everything. No, Jungkook replied, but it stops you from destroying it before it even starts. Jimin's breath caught. I'm not trying to destroy anything, he said. But you are, Jungkook said quietly. Every time you hesitate, every time you pull back, every time you choose fear over what you actually feel. Jimin clenched his jaw. You think I don't see that? Then why keep doing it? Jungkook asked. Jimin's voice cracked slightly, because I don't know how to stop. The words echoed through the room. Raw, unfiltered. Jungkook went still. For a moment the tension shifted, less sharp, more heavy. You stop, Jungkook said softly, by deciding something matters more than the fear. Jimin's chest rose and fell unevenly, and if I make the wrong decision. Jungkook stepped closer, close enough now that the space between them felt charged, almost unbearable. Then at least it's your decision, he said. Jimin looked at him, really looked at him, and saw it again, the same thing that had been there from the start. Not just frustration. Not just anger. But something deeper. Something real. You're asking me to risk everything, Jimin whispered. Jungkook shook his head slightly. No, I'm asking you to be honest about what you're already risking by doing nothing. The words hit harder than anything else. Jimin's breath caught. Because he knew. Jungkook was right. Silence fell again. But it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said yet. Jimin took a small step forward. Then another. Until there was barely any space left between them. Jungkook didn't move. Didn't step back. Didn't close the distance either. He just watched him. Waiting. Jimin's voice dropped barely above a whisper. If I choose this, there's no going back. Jungkook's gaze didn't waver, I know. And if it all falls apart? Then it falls apart, Jungkook said, but at least it'll be real. Jimin's chest tightened. For so long, he had built his life around avoiding that exact possibility. Now, he was standing right in front of it. And for the first time, he didn't step away. Instead, his hand lifted slightly, hesitating for just a second before reaching forward. Not pulling back this time. Not stopping halfway. But closing the distance. And choosing not to pretend anymore. Jungkook didn't move when Jimin's hand reached him. But he didn't step back either. That was the difference. The air between them felt charged, fragile, like one wrong movement could snap everything, but neither of them broke it. Jimin's fingers hovered for a second against Jungkook's wrist, as if waiting for rejection, for resistance, for anything that would give him a reason to retreat again. It didn't come. Instead, Jungkook's voice cut through the silence, low and steady. Don't do this halfway. Jimin's breath caught. His hand stilled. I'm not, he said, but it sounded more like a question than an answer. Jungkook's gaze didn't soften, then don't stop this time. The words settled deep. Jimin swallowed hard, his chest tightening, his mind screaming at him to pull back, to think, to calculate, to protect everything he had built. But something louder pushed through. Something he had been holding back for too long. I can't promise I won't be scared, Jimin said quietly. I'm not asking you not to be scared, Jungkook replied. I'm asking you not to let it decide for you. Jimin looked at him, really looked at him, and saw it clearly now. Jungkook wasn't pushing him. He was waiting. But not forever. That realization hit harder than anything else. Slowly, deliberately, Jimin let his hand settle fully against Jungkook's wrist. This time, he didn't pull away. The contact was simple, but it sent a quiet shock through both of them. Not explosive, not dramatic. Just real. Jungkook exhaled softly, something shifting in his expression, something less guarded, but still cautious. Okay, he murmured. Jimin's voice was barely audible. Okay. For a moment they just stood there like that, the tension easing slightly but not disappearing. Because this wasn't resolution. It was a step. And both of them knew how much that step cost. Then Jungkook spoke again. So what now? The question lingered, heavier than before. Jimin hesitated, but not the same way as before, not frozen, not running. Thinking. That's the part I don't know yet, he admitted. Jungkook nodded once, at least that's honest. Jimin let out a quiet breath, his thumb brushing slightly against Jungkook's wrist without thinking. It was a small movement. But it changed everything. Jungkook noticed. Of course he did. You keep doing that, he said, his voice quieter now, almost careful. Jimin stilled. Doing what? Acting like this doesn't mean anything, Jungkook replied, but your actions say something else. Jimin's chest tightened. I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything. Then say what it means, Jungkook pressed. Jimin looked at him, his expression shifting again, uncertain, but open in a way it hadn't been before. It means I don't want to lose you, he said. Jungkook held his gaze. That's not the same as choosing me. The words were calm, but they hit just as hard. Jimin exhaled slowly. I know. Then what are you choosing? Jungkook asked. There it was again. The question Jimin couldn't escape. This time, he didn't look away. I'm choosing not to lie anymore, he said. Jungkook's expression flickered, something like relief mixing with something more cautious. That's a start. It's all I can give right now, Jimin added. Jungkook studied him for a long moment. And what happens when that's not enough? Jimin's chest tightened. I don't know, he admitted. Jungkook nodded slowly, as if he had expected that answer. That's the part that worries me. Jimin stepped a little closer, his voice softer now. It worries me too. Silence fell again, but this time it felt less like conflict, more like something fragile trying to exist. Then, Jimin's phone buzzed. The sound cut through the moment like a blade. Both of them froze. Jimin glanced down. His manager. Again. The tension snapped right back into place. Jungkook noticed immediately. Don't. Jimin hesitated. It buzzed again. Insistent. You don't have to answer that, Jungkook said, his voice steady but edged. Jimin looked at the screen, then back at Jungkook. I know. The phone kept vibrating in his hand. Demanding. Pulling. Reminding him of everything waiting outside this room. Jungkook's voice dropped slightly. This is what I meant. Jimin frowned. What? This, Jungkook said, nodding toward the phone. The second something real happens, something else tries to take it away. Jimin's grip tightened around the device. It's not that simple, he said. It is right now, Jungkook replied. You either answer it or you don't. Jimin's heart pounded. The choice felt small. But it was. It wasn't just a call. It was everything behind it. Expectations. Control. Fear. Jungkook watched him closely. What are you going to do? Jimin's mind raced. Every instinct told him to answer. To maintain control. To keep everything from spiraling. But another voice, quieter but stronger now, told him something else. He looked at Jungkook. At the space between them that was no longer empty. At the truth he had finally stopped denying. Then, he turned the phone off. Completely. The silence that followed was immediate. Heavy. Real. Jungkook blinked, clearly not expecting that. He started. I know, Jimin said, his voice steady but his pulse racing. Jungkook stared at him. They're not going to like that. Jimin let out a quiet breath. I'm starting to realize that might not matter as much as I thought. The words hung between them. Different. New. Jungkook searched his face, like he was trying to figure out if this was real, or just another moment that would disappear. Say that again, he said quietly. Jimin met his gaze. And this time, there was no hesitation. I'm starting to realize that losing this, he gestured slightly between them, might be worse than losing everything else. Jungkook's breath caught. For a second, neither of them moved. Because that wasn't careful. That wasn't controlled. That was real. And it changed everything. Jungkook stepped closer, closing the last bit of distance that had been left. You don't get to take that back later, he said softly. Jimin shook his head. I'm not planning to. The tension shifted again, but this time it wasn't sharp. It was something deeper. More dangerous. More certain. Jungkook's voice dropped, then don't disappear on me again. Jimin's chest tightened, I won't. A pause. Then Jungkook added, quieter. Almost like a warning to himself as much as to Jimin. Because if you do, I won't be here next time. Jimin felt the weight of that settle deep. I know, he said. And this time. He meant it. Morning came quietly, as if the world itself was unsure whether to disturb what had finally begun to settle. Jimin woke before the sun fully rose, the dim light slipping through the curtains in soft grey lines. For a moment he didn't move. He just lay there, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, the unfamiliar stillness. Then he remembered. Not with panic. Not with regret. But with a strange, steady clarity. He turned his head slightly. Jungkook was there. Asleep on the couch, one arm draped loosely over his eyes as if even in rest he was trying to block something out. His breathing was slow, even, calm in a way Jimin had never seen before, not on set, not in passing moments, not in the tension that had defined everything between them until now. Jimin watched him for a long time. Not analyzing. Not overthinking. Just watching. It felt different. For once, his mind wasn't racing ahead to consequences, to damage control, to everything that could go wrong. For once, he stayed in the moment. And it scared him. But not enough to pull away. Jimin sat up slowly, careful not to make noise, his gaze still fixed on Jungkook. There was something vulnerable about seeing him like this, unguarded, unaware, real in a way that no performance could replicate. This was what he had almost walked away from. The realization settled quietly but firmly. Jimin stood, moving closer without thinking, stopping just a few steps away. He hesitated for a second, old habits still lingering, before reaching out. His fingers brushed lightly against Jungkook's arm. A small gesture. But intentional. Jungkook stirred almost immediately, his arm shifting as he blinked awake, disoriented for a second before his eyes focused. On Jimin. They stayed like that, silent, still both caught in the weight of everything that had changed overnight. You're still here, Jungkook said, his voice rough with sleep. It wasn't a question. But it carried one. Jimin nodded once, yeah. Jungkook studied him carefully like he was searching for something, for doubt, for hesitation, for any sign that this was temporary. Jimin didn't look away. I meant what I said, he added quietly. Jungkook sat up slowly, his expression unreadable for a moment. You say that now. Jimin exhaled, a small tired smile touching his lips. I know. The honesty in that seemed to catch Jungkook off guard. Jimin ran a hand through his hair, his voice steady but softer than before. I don't know what this looks like tomorrow, or next week. I don't know how messy it's going to get. Jungkook didn't interrupt. But I know I'm done pretending it's nothing, Jimin continued. And I know I don't want to walk away from it just because it's difficult. The words weren't perfect. They weren't polished. But they were real. And that mattered more. Jungkook leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees, his gaze still fixed on Jimin. You understand this isn't going to be easy. I know, Jimin said. They're not going to back off, Jungkook added. Your manager, the contracts, the expectations, they're still there. Jimin nodded, I know. A pause. Then Jungkook asked the question that mattered most. So what are you going to do? Jimin didn't answer immediately. Not because he was hesitating. But because, for once, he was choosing his words carefully, not to protect himself but to be honest. I'm going to deal with it, he said finally. Not avoid it, not hide from it, actually deal with it. Jungkook's eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion but in focus. And if they push back? They will, Jimin said. And Jimin met his gaze. And I won't just give in, he replied. The certainty in his voice was new. Even to himself. Jungkook watched him for a long moment, something shifting in his expression, something softer but still cautious. You've never said that before, he pointed out. Jimin gave a small, almost self-aware laugh. I've never meant it before. Silence settled between them again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't suffocating. It felt open. Jungkook stood slowly, closing the distance between them until they were standing face to face again. Close enough to feel the warmth, to hear each other's breathing, to notice the smallest shifts in expression. This doesn't fix everything, Jungkook said quietly. I know, Jimin replied. It doesn't guarantee anything. I know. Jungkook searched his face one more time, and you're still scared. Jimin didn't deny it, yeah. A small pause. Then Jungkook nodded just once. Good, he said. Jimin blinked slightly, good. Jungkook's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. It means you actually understand what you're stepping into. Jimin let out a quiet breath, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. Yes, he murmured, I think I finally do. Another moment passed. Then Jungkook spoke again, softer now. So what is this? The question wasn't demanding. It wasn't pushing. It was open. Jimin looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time. He didn't try to define it perfectly. It's something real, he said. Jungkook's gaze didn't waver. And that's enough. Jimin hesitated, but only briefly. Then he nodded. For now, he said. Jungkook studied him, then let out a small breath, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. For now, he repeated. It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't a clean resolution. The world outside that room hadn't changed, the pressure was still there, the consequences were still waiting. But something had shifted. Not in the world. In them. Jimin didn't have all the answers. Jungkook didn't have any guarantees. But they were no longer standing on opposite sides of fear. They were standing in the same place. Choosing even without certainty. And as the sunlight finally broke through the curtains, filling the room with warmth and quiet light, Jimin realized something he hadn't allowed himself to believe before. For the first time, he wasn't just performing a life that looked complete. He was living one that finally felt real. And that, despite everything still waiting for them outside, was enough.